The Bible is the Word of God, our daily bread, and it is applicable to every area of life, including our businesses. So today we are going to dive into the story of Moses and the lessons that we can learn from his life that directly relate to us and entrepreneurship. So a quick little Cliff Notes version of Moses' story. So Moses was called by God to lead the people out of slavery in Egypt and into the promised land. So he was born an Israelite boy, and at that time, Pharaoh had commanded that the midwives kill every baby born if it was a boy. Moses was born, but the midwives disobeyed the Pharaoh's orders, and his mother kept him safe for a few months. But after knowing that she could not keep him in hiding much longer, she placed him in a basket, put him in the Nile River, and Pharaoh's daughter ended up finding baby Moses in this basket and adopted him as her own son. As an adult, one day Moses went out to where the Israelites lived and saw how poorly they were being treated by the Egyptians. This led him to actually murder one of the Egyptians that was treating the Israelites so harshly, and he ended up fleeing to the wilderness, which is where God met him through a burning bush and told him, "Moses, you are the one I have chosen to help lead my people out of slavery in Egypt and into the promised land." Moses was filled with doubt and uncertainty and felt very unqualified, but he obeyed God, he confronted Pharaoh, and he led God's people to the promised land. The first lesson is that feeling unqualified does not disqualify you. Let's look at Moses. He was fearful, he was doubtful, he begged God to choose someone else. He had a speech impediment when God was choosing him to speak to the Pharaoh. He was in his 80s. He was a murderer and a foreigner. He was not the most qualified person for this job, right? And maybe as an entrepreneur today, you are feeling like other people are more skilled, or you don't have enough credentials, or you're not far enough along in your journey to do the things that you want to do. But God rarely calls the most qualified or the most special people. He is in the business of using ordinary people to do extraordinary things for his kingdom, and he can use anything that you have to further your business and to further his kingdom. That brings us right into lesson 2, which is God asks you to use what you already have. In Exodus chapter 4, Moses asked God, "What if they won't believe me and will not obey me, but say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?" But the Lord asked him, "What is in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. And God used that staff to perform miracles in front of Pharaoh. So God wasn't asking him to use something he didn't already have. He said, "What is in your hand?" And that's what he's asking you today too. You might think that you need a bigger audience or more skills or better equipment, but he is going to use what you already have: your experience, your story, and your giftings. He's not asking you to be someone that you're not. He's asking you to use what's already in your hand. Lesson 3 is your past isn't wasted. Moses had a pretty traumatic past, being torn from his family, growing up in the palace, but then murdering the Egyptian and having to flee to the wilderness where he was a shepherd for 40 years. But God used that time to prepare him for what he had in store. You may think that certain things disqualify you, but they might actually be your strengths. Your past careers, your mistakes, your failures, your trauma, your story, but those may be the things that God is actually using to prepare you for what's next. He is never going to waste your past. Next is obedience does not always make things easier. So in Moses' story, when he obeyed God and went to talk to Pharaoh for the first time, things actually got worse for the Israelites. Pharaoh doubled down and started treating them even more harshly. And then even once they were freed from slavery and were in the wilderness working their way to the promised land, the Israelites constantly complained to Moses saying, "Why didn't you just leave us as slaves in Egypt? Why did you bring us out here to die?" So things often got worse for him once he obeyed before they got better, and people often criticized the way he was doing things. And that may be similar to you in your business. When you step forward in obedience, when you step forward with something new, other people may not understand what you're doing. Your income might drop for a while. You might feel some resistance. But on the other side of that resistance, if you will just stay consistent and stick with your game plan, you will see the breakthrough. The next thing we learn from Moses is you're not meant to do this alone. So God gave Moses a partner in Aaron to help him communicate and face the Pharaoh. For you, this might look like hiring a business coach or joining a membership or getting very involved in networking groups. Your business will always move faster and will be more effective if you can find good people to surround yourself with. Also, in Moses' story, when the Israelites are in the wilderness and they're growing, they're becoming this huge people group, his father in law, Jethro, comes to him and says, Moses, this is not sustainable. You cannot do all of this alone. And he encourages Moses to delegate other leaders to help him lead the people. So when your business grows as it reaches new levels, you may also need to delegate. You might need to hire a VA or start to hire someone else on your team, maybe even some freelancers to help take some things off your plate that don't have to be done by you so that you can step fully into the role that you were meant to have. The next lesson is keep going back to God. Anytime Moses came across roadblocks, he immediately went to God. And you know the thing that God would often say to him in these responses? The first thing he would say is, I am the Lord your God. He's reminding Moses of who he is. And you need to do that in your business too. Things aren't always going to go smoothly. You're going to run into problems that you didn't anticipate and you're not sure what to do about. And you need to go to God first. Yes, we need to surround ourselves with good coaches and mentorships that can help us make those decisions. But first and foremost, we need to go to God. And I think the first thing he's going to do is remind us of who he is. And that is going to bring us the eternal perspective that we need to run a kingdom-led business. The next lesson is that God commands rest. It was during this time period that God told the Israelites that they needed to take one Sabbath day every week to rest from work and to focus on worshiping him. He actually says that it is a gift for us. So we need to work rest and margin and Sabbath into our working week. Hustling harder and harder is not what is going to get us to that next level. God knows better than anyone what is best for us, and he knows that we work best when we actually get rest. One thing I love about this story is the other gods that people would worship in that day and time were constantly requiring more and more of their people and were demanding work, work, work. But our God, he commands rest. How beautiful is that? It truly is a gift from the Lord. The last lesson we learn from Moses is that God is the one who gets the glory. Yes, Moses obeyed, but he was not the one who freed the Israelites. God freed the Israelites. And really, the story isn't even about Moses. The story is to teach us about God and how powerful and how faithful he is. So as entrepreneurs, yes, we need to do the work. We need to get the right strategy. We need to be obedient, but the outcomes belong to God. I know I personally relate to Moses so much in this story. I often feel very unqualified, not skilled enough, not eloquent enough, but the story of Moses reminds me that it's not about me. When I am weak, then God's glory can shine all the brighter. I would love for you to comment below which of these lessons you are going to take with you into your business this week. And if this episode brought you clarity and encouragement, I would love for you to subscribe so that we can meet back here again next week to grow and scale your God-honoring business.